In today's video, we will be taking a look at another hypothetical 2024 presidential election prediction between Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy. Donald Trump being the 45th president of the United States, and Robert F. Kennedy being the now independent candidate for the United States presidency. Now let's give you some background information. In 2023, Robert Kennedy announced that he would seek for the Democratic nomination for president. He consistently polled around 10 to 15% in the Democratic primary vote totals, but he abruptly dropped out around October 8th of this year. So, after that, you can see that none of the Democratic primary polls included him because now he is running as an independent. So, without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Now, in this prediction, I'm assuming there is no Democrat, because if there is a Democrat, Robert F. Kennedy will not win any states whatsoever. He's going to win a very slight amount of the popular vote. So here we have Donald Trump as the Republican, and Robert F. Kennedy as the independent, or characterized as probably going to end up winning most of the Democratic states. So let's start off by giving Donald Trump his likely states, because he is still behind in the electoral vote count. Donald Trump will win the state of Alaska, he will win the state of South Carolina, and that is pretty much it. These two states are going to vote for him by around 10 percentage points, as you may expect, and as well as that, the states of Iowa and Ohio. So both these states voted for him by about 8% in 2020, and although Robert F. Kennedy could make these states a bit closer in terms of the vote margins, because he is more conservative on many issues, he may be able to appeal to moderate Republicans. I do think that Trump will end up winning both these states. Now, many people do, and pundits do believe that Robert F. Kennedy would do quite well, because he is indeed a moderate candidate. Now, both these states will end up voting for Donald Trump by around 5 percentage points, because I do believe that Trump will still be able to do very well in the white working class regions in both Iowa and Ohio. Now, going to the next states for Donald Trump in the likely Republican column, I do believe Florida will be in the likely Republican column as well. You will see that in the state of Florida, Donald Trump was able to defeat Joe Biden there by 3.3 percentage points, but the state is heavily trending to the Republican Party. I also don't think that Robert F. Kennedy is going to energize the Democratic base, and although he might get some better margins in the in some of the rural areas, specifically the Panhandle, in counties like Monroe County, Collier County, Hendry County, Lee County, these more rural counties and more conservative counties, he's probably not going to be able to do very well in counties like Broward, Palm Beach, or Orlando, Tallahassee, or these Democratic leading areas, and won't be able to get very high turnout in Democratic regions, because at the end of the day, he is an independent. Now that pretty much wraps it up for Donald Trump's likely Republican states. We do have a second congressional district. I think that will go to Donald Trump by a likely margin. Now going to the likely states for Robert Kennedy: Colorado, New Mexico, and the state of Virginia. I don't think that's too surprising. All three of those states waiting for Joe Biden in 2020 by more than 10 percentage points. So obviously, Robert F. Kennedy will defeat Donald Trump in all three of those states. As well as that means at-large vote likely for Robert F. Kennedy. Also take New Hampshire as well, white college-educated state. It trended heavily towards Joe Biden there in 2020, because Trump did end up making some negative comments about the state in his campaign trail. Therefore, the state heavily trended to the Democratic Party by around 7% overall. And I do believe that in 2024, the margin will hold for the same. Now, finally, I do believe Robert F. Kennedy will win Minnesota by a likely margin. Joe Biden won the state by about 7 points in 2020, so it definitely makes sense that Robert F. Kennedy will end up winning by a similar margin. I think that he'll do poorly in some of the Minneapolis regions where Democratic turnout will be lowered, but I think he'll end up also doing better in some of the rural areas, making some marginal gains in the rural regions of the state and generally just lower Republican turnout because Robert F. Kennedy himself does have some conservative values, especially on vaccines. He is a vaccine advocate. Now going to the final states here, these will all be lean or tilt states, starting with the state of Nevada. Now, in terms of trends in the state of Nevada, we do see that Republicans are being Clark County, the largest county by far in the state, did end up trending to Republicans by about 1.4 percentage points, though the national environment trended to the Democratic Party by more than 2 points. The state of Nevada remained static. In fact, it narrowly trended to the Republican Party. Nonetheless, I do believe that Robert F. Kennedy, because he is more moderate, he will end up lowering the Republican turnout overall in some of these rural regions. Now, the big problem for the Republicans is that they don't really have any areas where they gain a huge ton of votes. They only have these rural regions. Democrats consistently win Clark County, and Democrats typically do end up winning Washoe County, or at least this county is more or less of a draw. And Democrats typically net about 80,000 votes in Clark County, which means Republicans have to win about 80,000 votes in the rural regions. And with Robert F. Kennedy being the candidate, I simply do not see Republicans being able to do that because, again, Robert F. Kennedy also has some conservative values. Now going to the state of Arizona. Now, Arizona is a more moderate state. Now, we do see that the state GOP party is very, very conservative. Nonetheless, voters in the state of Arizona, at least the voters that truly decide elections there, more so than other states, are the most moderate voters. Those are voters that voted for Trump in 2016, definitely voted for Mitt Romney in 2012 or John McCain in 2008, but refused to vote for Trump or actually voted for Biden in 2020. And those are moderate voters in the counties of Maricopa and to a lesser extent in the county of Pima. Both these counties trended to Democrats by about 5 percentage points. Now, if Joe Biden's not the nominee, I think that some of those voters could end up voting for Trump once more because they also don't like Democratic candidates. But with a moderate like Robert F. Kennedy, I think that Democrats will do, not Democrats, but Robert Kennedy will be able to do very well in the state because moderate Republicans will not hesitate to end up voting for an independent as much as they will for a Democratic candidate, especially the incumbent Democratic president of the United States. So this will definitely be a lean state for Robert Kennedy. Now going to the state of Texas. I don't think it's much of a surprise here that Donald Trump will end up winning the state. He won the state by more than 5 points in 2020, and I do think that Joe Biden's probably going to end up, if he is to be a candidate, to end up losing to Donald Trump here in the state of Texas by around 6 to 7 points. Nonetheless, someone like Robert F. Kennedy may not be able to energize voters in counties like Travis, which would be concerning because Democrats, they have to bang on these type of vote pockets. Bexar County, Travis County, Dallas, and Houston. These are the 4 locations where Democrats typically net a substantial amount of votes in. And I think that with someone like Robert F. Kennedy, he won't be able to do very well in those counties. But I think he'll be able to energize some even Republican-leaning, conservative-leaning Republicans who are anti-Trump in some of these Republican-leaning suburbs. Those are voters that are willing to vote for Robert F. Kennedy if they are never Trump. They might not vote for a Democrat, but they are willing to vote for an independent. Furthermore, I think that because Robert F. Kennedy, again, has some more moderate values, or even conservative values at times, I do believe that Republicans will have lower turnout overall in some of the rural regions. So this will ultimately be a lead state for Donald Trump. Now going to the state of Georgia. Now this is one of the states where I think that Robert Kennedy could have some problems in. First off, there's a lot of African American voters or Hispanic voters that Democrats need to appeal to in the Atlanta region. And Democrats have only about one significant vote pocket in the state. Sure, they have areas like Macon, Muskegon, Chatham, Athens, and Augusta, but these counties in total netted about 100,000 votes for Joe Biden in 2020, so not the most significant vote pockets. Democrats still have to rely heavily on 3 counties in the state, Fulton, DeKalb, and also Clayton. These 3 counties netted Joe Biden about 600,000 votes in the state. if not slightly more. So these are the areas where someone like Robert Kennedy will not be able to do that well in, because he is more of a moderate, and he does have, again, conservative values. He is an anti-vaccine advocate, and he is really out of the Democratic mainstream. Though he was running as a Democrat, Democrats were unlikely to support him. And that's a problem for Atlanta, because there are many Democrats who may not be so energized to vote for someone like Robert Kennedy as opposed to Joe Biden. Sure, he could do pretty well in some of the suburban areas, but that won't be enough. And although, again, he can overperform in the rural areas, it might just not be enough for him to win the state. I think Trump will probably win the state of Georgia. Now going to the state of North Carolina. In the neighboring state of Georgia, Joe Biden was able to narrowly win the state. In the state of North Carolina, however, Trump won the state in 2020. And this is going to be a very close state as well. I think that someone like Robert F. Kennedy will be able to do very well in the rural areas, and even some of the counties that end up trending away from the Democratic Party, some of these rural white counties that ultimately cost Democrats the state, because those counties heavily trended to the Republican Party. I think that Robert F. Kennedy should be able to do very well in the rural regions, and also end up narrowing down some of the Republican margins in the Republican-leading exurban regions around Charlotte, as well as counties like Greensboro. Overall, I think that he'll end up doing worse in the urban areas, like in other states, but have significant improvements in the rural regions, ultimately winning him the state of North Carolina. Now going to the final three states here, I'm just going to get Nebraska's 2nd district out of the way. This is probably going to be a likely district for Robert F. Kennedy. Joe Biden won the district by 7, and although the redistricting made the district slightly more Republican-leaning, it's not really much of a difference. Now going to the 3 final Rust Belt states here that will decide the presidential election. Let's start off with the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a state that narrowly voted for Joe Biden by just 0.63% in 2020. And I hesitate to say that Robert F. Kennedy will have a very easy victory in the state. Nonetheless, Trump is not someone who's very well liked in the Milwaukee exurbs, which are also deemed the wild counties, specifically Waukesha, Washington, and Okauchee County. These 3 counties ultimately gained Democrats about 30,000 votes there, because yes, these are heavily Republican-leading counties, and those 3 counties netted Trump about 90,000 votes. But if the margins stayed the same as they were in 2016 in terms of the vote totals, Trump would have netted a further 35,000 votes, which is why these counties are very crucial. These are the Republican pockets in the state, but these are counties that have been trending away from candidates like Donald Trump. Now, Trump is a very good candidate for the state of Wisconsin, especially for the working class regions, but not so much for these wild counties. And I think that someone like Robert Kennedy will be able to do very well in counties like the wild counties. These are Republican pockets, and someone like Robert Kennedy will end up gauging Republicans to end up voting for him, because some of these Republicans may be anti-Trump, and they might not vote for a Democrat either. But someone like Robert Kennedy, who is more moderate, may end up being a viable option for some of these Republican voters, which will ultimately help Robert Kennedy end up winning the state of Wisconsin. Now, going to the state of Michigan. Now, if Wisconsin votes for Robert Kennedy, Michigan will certainly vote for him as well. The state is much less conservative than the state of Wisconsin, as consistently voted to the left of the state of Wisconsin. Generally speaking, Democrats, especially Joe Biden, was able to do very well in some of these suburban regions. They ended up heavily trending towards the Democratic Party by sometimes upwards of 10% in counties like Kent, and around 6% in Oakland, Ingram, and Washington, which is where Ann Arbor is located. Overall speaking, the state of Michigan is more liberal than the state of Wisconsin, and because Wisconsin will end up voting for someone like Robert F. Kennedy, so will the state of Michigan. Finally, the state of Pennsylvania. Now, the state of Pennsylvania doesn't really matter, as Robert Kennedy has already won the presidency. but still, we're still gonna go to the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania voted for Joe Biden by about 1.2% in the state in 2020, and I do believe the margin will be somewhat similar in 2024 if Joe Biden is the eventual nominee. Now, again, Robert F. Kennedy has his strengths and weaknesses. His strengths are largely from the rural areas of the state, where he won't win the rural regions, but he'll do a much better job than Democrats. However, he's definitely going to lose some support in the Philadelphia region, as well as some of the suburbs around Philadelphia and also around the area of Pittsburgh. However, again, Republicans need turnout to end up winning a state like Pennsylvania. Typically, in lower turnout elections, Democrats do end up winning in Pennsylvania because they have locked-in voters in the Philadelphia region that are guaranteed to vote for Democrats, and because the population of Philadelphia is so large, around 1 million people registered voters in the county of Philadelphia, and Democrats are going to consistently net at least 300 to 400,000 votes in Philadelphia. It ultimately in lower turnout elections, which will likely be the case if Robert Kennedy is the nominee, where Democrats are unengaged to vote for him, while Republicans are less engaged to vote for someone like Trump. I do believe that ultimately Robert Kennedy will probably end up winning the state of Pennsylvania. Anyways, thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.